Hello and welcome back to the Red Special Guitar Podcast, episode number 25. 25 episodes. Where has that time gone? It's crazy to me to think I've spoken to 25 different individuals and created 25 different podcast episodes. We have had some amazing guests on. I mean, everyone's been amazing, but not least to mention the main one to get, which was last year in October, which was Sir Brian Harold May, or Dr. Sir Brian Harold May, CBE himself, who was fantastic, and it was so good chatting to him and seeing how that all panned out. It's an absolutely fantastic thing I'd known for quite some time, and at some point I will tell the story of how that all happened, but for now, just know that it was awesome and continues to be awesome. And we've had loads of wonderful people from the community, I don't want to name them because I'll forget them all, but there's been absolutely loads of people on there, and you guys have been fantastic at sending in suggestions, ideas, putting me in touch with people. It's been really, really fun and really great. So thank you to all of you for doing that, and thank you to the podcast patrons, the originals, and the guys that have come on over the last sort of 12 months, 18 months. You guys rock, and we've got this lovely little community online, if you are a patron, where you can ask questions, get to know who the guests are coming up, get to suggest questions, get to ask technical questions, guitar advice, life advice, and help each other out. And it's a really safe place where we can do some really good things. And we've got some really young people in there. We've got some people that have been in the forum a long time, and we've got the range in between. And it's great. There's a worldwide community of people that get to talk podcasts and all things around it. So if you fancy joining, then please do. It costs as little as £3 a month, which is next to nothing, and you can be part of that and help the podcast grow. On to today's guest. Well, today's guest is up there with one of the most requested guests that we have. And obviously we had Brian May last year, so that's number one gone. The next one would be Nigel Knight, who we're still trying to convince it is a good idea to get him on the podcast. So if you know Nigel, please tell him he needs to get on this podcast so that we can have a chat with him and understand his story and how everything's been interwoven and where he is today and how he's got there. It'd be great to get Nigel on. I know I would like to speak to Nigel and have a chat with him. And the third one, which is most surprising, is my story. How did I get into all this and how did I do that? So without further questioning of myself, here's my podcast with me. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Red Special Guitar Podcast. I am not John Underhill. This is John Underhill. I'm Luke Holwerda, and I've taken over this podcast today as we have a very special treat in store. Returning listeners, you'll be very familiar with this guest. It is, of course, the Meetup man, the podcast man, the man himself, John Underhill.
Hello.
John, welcome to your podcast.
They're like, welcome to This Is Your Life, Luke. I don't know if you get that reference.
That's what I was going for.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Well, it's a real pleasure to be asked.
Is it a pleasure to be asked? How do you feel about being on your own podcast?
Oddly, it's probably I'm the third most requested guest after originally Brian and then Nigel Knight and now myself.
Well,
so
yeah.
Currently the second most requested guest.
There you go. Well, we got one more we've got to get.
Yeah.
But we'll see if anyone regrets asking for this one.
They probably do already.
So just as like a bookkeeping thing, it's 10 p.m. where I'm at. What time is it where you're at?
It's currently just past 5 a.m. I've got up really early because of our schedules to make sure that I can do this before I have to drop the children to school.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty much wired. And I think you're just waking up. So hopefully we'll meet somewhere in the middle because I'll start to crash at some point. But yeah, so anything exciting happened recently? Anyone you talked to that was pretty cool? Do you want to talk about that now? Do you want to save that?
So recent podcast before this, there should have hopefully been a couple of other guests. One would have been Tim Staffel, who was originally from 1984 and Smile and Humpy Bong, and he was amazing. And
Humpy Bong,
he was more of a guest than I could ever possibly ask for. We spoke a bit about Red Specials, but then just talked about Tim's life and career, and he was really candid, and I hope everyone got as much out of it as I did. I thought it's a great episode. And then there's another episode with a guitaring YouTuber called Dave Simpson from the UK, who, if you haven't checked out, go and check out. He's done a few things with the BMG, but his channel's all about other guitar players. But that was a great episode too. Great to get Dave on and have a bit of YouTube love sharing. It's really good. But I guess before that, which is probably what you're getting at, last year in October time, I was lucky enough to get Brian May on the podcast, or I should say, Dr. Sir Brian May.
Dr. Sir or Sir Doctor?
I think it's Dr. Sir Brian May, CBE, and that was just amazing. It's one of those things that, I mean, you were guest number one, and I think you helped me with the podcast quite a bit in those early days, and I think jokingly I said about getting him on, and I never kind of thought that I would that quickly, and then. Yeah, it's a hard one to put into words what it actually means and how you feel about those things, because I have to pinch myself still to think I spoke to Brian May for that period of time on a podcast and got to ask him some questions, and I got a little bit of time with him before and a little bit of time afterwards, and it still hasn't quite sunk in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was kind of hoping to talk to you a little more after that episode, just because I was kind of curious about how much of a buzz it was and how you were feeling, and how it is compared to meeting other people. I mean, it's not just meeting someone. I mean, you had a good long hour conversation with them. So
yeah, it's really so the morning before, so it was scheduled for I think 1:00 in the afternoon, and I'd taken the afternoon off work to make sure that I was free to do it, and I'd blocked my calendar out for 3 hours, so I didn't have to go and pick the children up. I didn't have to do after school club. I didn't have to be in work. But that morning was really manic. So the night before, I didn't sleep that well because I was thinking I've got Brian May in the morning, and I kind of felt like the weight of the forum was on me, because it's that one chance to ask him some questions, and talk about him and the Red Special and building it with his dad. And so I felt a bit of pressure on me to get that right. And I'd thought a lot about what I would ask him over the years. So I had a list of notes on my iPhone of I could ask this question, that question, this question, that. And I just thought too much about what I would ask him, I guess, and was getting a bit stressed. But that morning at work was really busy, and there's some unforeseen circumstances happened. So it meant I was driving around a bit and going to different sites and doing different things. And it completely took my mind off it until about half an hour before it was time to record the episode, and then it sunk in, and I actually recorded some video, which we'll put in another video at some point, of me recording with Brian May about how I was feeling, like literally 10 minutes before I sat down with him, which is pretty honest. And then he came on the screen, and I had to calm down and sort myself out, and I actually decided before he came on that I wasn't going to list out my questions, and it needed to be what the podcast is, which is just a conversation really, and a chat between two friends. And having watched the episode back, I think I was really pleased that I managed to stick to that, and I think I got more out of him than I would have if I'd just gone, I've got this question about the guitar, and what did you do? When did you put the black tape on? Why did you use those switches? And I think we got some deeper stuff from him.
Yeah, I met him at a bookstore once. He was doing a signing, and I drove out from Phoenix just to shake his hand and say thank you, And I was in line, and there was this long line of people just curling all around. And every now and then you'd get like a peek at him, and people were like, "Oh my gosh," And like as we got closer and closer, people started crying, like in line. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm next. I have to say something to him." And I was like, pretty lame. And then I got up there and I was like, "Oh fuck, what am I gonna actually say to him?" Like, I mean, because like at some point you're just like, I drove here. I literally just wanted to shake his hand and say thank you. And then I was like, I have to follow that up with something, so I'll come up with something on the spot. And he's very sweet, and he's very gracious, and like he kind of just took over, and he's just like, "So what are you doing today? What else are you?" And it was like, I kind of felt like, not that he did that to you, but I felt like he comes in and he's like, "I know you're going to need to we need to just set this thing up, and I'll
Yeah.
answer your question, and I'll give you some stuff that you need, and then we can start chatting. And it was like,
Yeah.
that's great.
It's 100% that. So when I had Zoom open, and I'd actually been speaking to a lady to set it up, a lady called Sally Avery Frost, who is amazing and has been fantastic throughout the whole thing, who works for Brian. And she'd emailed me like a few minutes before and said, if he's not there, give me a ring and I'll find out why he's not on. But I'm sat there looking at my Zoom, and it comes up, Brian May is trying to enter your room. And I was like,
Yeah,
I know. Luke, you helped me with Andric put together the teaser trailer for the episode, and it was like a proper. Although the breath in that was made up, the was properly like, that's real.
Yeah.
Although we didn't capture it, and that was, yeah. He came on and he's like, "Can you hear me? Where are you? I can." I couldn't. All I could see was like some grey curly hair, and then he moved the screen up a little bit more. He's like, "Oh, there you are. Hello, John. How are you?" And I was like, "Oh, hello, Brian. How are you?" And then he proceeded to walk around the room, making sure that the light was okay by moving curtains and checking what light was on him and asking how the sound was. And then he spent a good few minutes sorting his hair out.
Well, he's done this before.
Yeah, well, it completely just like set me at ease, and I was able to ask him how he was and explain what we do on the podcast. And it's just true. He knew what he was doing to calm me down enough to ask him sensible questions. And I was just so over. So within a few minutes, I'd gone from like uber fan to I'm just talking to someone, and then I hope it comes across in the podcast. I think you can tell I'm a little bit nervous to begin with, and I stumble with my words and questions, and then we get into it, and it sort of makes it a lot easier. And he made me feel very at ease, and like I could ask him anything. And I just then wanted to make sure that I gave a good account of the forum and made sure that he knew what we all thought of him and what he meant to us. Because I think I often wonder if he's really aware of the 5,000 of us on the Facebook forum or what goes on at the meetup. And I just thought he needs to know what he's inspired us to do, and he needs to know what we think of him, and actually hear that from someone and try and give him some context behind it all. So it's not just that we're a bunch of anoraks that love this guitar. It's deeper than that, and it means more. And we've created this thing online that's very rare. And I just wanted to get that message across, really. And I probably sound a bit like a broken record saying it to him, but having been able to stay in touch with him afterwards, I can assure everyone watching he was very appreciative of what we're doing. And he's a very lovely chap, and you can't say enough nice things about him, really.
But that's the thing, is it's like you kind of never know what other people know about themselves or their own reputation, or how they're viewed and things like that. And I mean, I think Brian is in a different kind of situation. I think he does know people like him. But I think this forum, unless he had stumbled across it before, I think it's a pretty kind of obscure thing. Like, I don't know that there's that many other guitarists that have like a forum dedicated to them. And I think the thing is, and I think that the differentiation is it's like, it's not like a hero worship thing. It's like this is just an appreciation for the art behind the guitar, the engineering that went into it, and like then what comes out of it. All these pieces come together because this is a forum for owners and players and builders, and it's just a different kind of appreciation. And I feel like that's the kind of thing, when people say to you, your thing was great, I really like your song, you're like, thanks, that's cool, but like there's like a deeper level, I think, where sometimes there's like a different kind of appreciation that you go, this person kind of gets what I was going for. And I think I think that came across in the interview. I think you conveyed that well, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think there is another side of it, which is like, as you said, when the screen pops up, I mean, there's this image of a person who's only ever lived on a screen for most of us, and then you open your computer now, that screen's talking to you. It's got to be a little strange.
Very. And it's that's what I mean. And at the time you're conscious of lots of things. So I was told I had half an hour with him, so I was thinking I need to be like punchy and I need to make sure that I'm sticking to this. And if I want to get the best out of him, I need to let him talk because no one's come to listen to me. But I also need to try and steer the conversation. But what you wouldn't have seen is that like 45 minutes we stopped and I asked him, "Is everything okay? We've gone over the time." And he said to me, "It's all right, John. We've got all afternoon. You ask whatever you want to until you feel the end." Obviously, we edited that out. You edited that out, Luke. But because you did a great job on the episode for me. But yeah, he was just very happy to be there, and I think you can tell in him. And I've had people say this to me, and then I've reviewed it. It's not something that I thought until I've rewatched it. That actually, he seemed the most comfortable he has in an interview. And he seemed really animated talking about the guitar, and he got really excited about talking about parts of things that he had done with his dad and with his friends, and that he hasn't talked about before. And I think you pointed out to me a long time ago that usually he gets the same questions. "Oh, so you built your guitar with your dad?" And he goes, "Yeah, and this bit's a bit of the bike saddle, and there's some valve springs in here." And they go, "Oh, that's great," and they move on. And
Yeah, how does it sound? What's it sound like? Like, play it, Brian. And it's like, well, hold on a second. There's a whole interesting story here that we just glossed over. And I mean, it's news, and it is people who legitimately are getting 5 minutes with him because they cycle him in and out. So it's a different, you kind of have to appreciate that fact as well. But I'm always sitting there going, yeah, but wait a minute, like, how did they do all this stuff?
Yeah. To have him get excited, and you can see like in his eyes, he gets really excited talking about it. And so I was there with my hand drill in a vise, and I had some 3mm aluminium, which my dad just had around because that's the sort of thing you do. And I'm there with my file, and I'm doing this, and I'm making a roller, and just as I get to the other side, nearly done, it goes snap.
Bing. Yep.
And I've got to start again. And those things you don't.
But he knew you would appreciate that because
100%.
You've been there,
Yeah.
But it's a different interviewer speaking to him. It's a different kind of person. So somebody else's eyes might glaze over, but this was like everybody on the forum was thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is gold,"
But I just think he was very aware of the situation, and as you said, the sort of person watching or listening, and he was able to answer those things and be a lot more free with what he was saying and not be constrained himself. And it's nice. It's interesting when you ask someone a question and they start to answer it. And again, I think you can see this a little bit. You start to answer it with their stock answer, and then the brain goes, "Yeah, but you can go a bit deeper this time." And then you almost see him like look back to his memory, and then all of a sudden all this extra stuff comes out. And I think you sort of see that smile come on his face.
Yeah, exactly. Like you asked him something, you kind of teed him up for a joke question at one point. And he's like, "Okay, so you want the Queen answer. So let me tell you how Queen started." And then he kind of was like, he was remembering other things. Cause I mean, there was things, I don't know every single thing about Queen, that's ever been said, but, there was things in there. I was like, I don't know that I've heard this before. Like just little tidbits about Roger or about Freddie. And it was like, he was just thinking, this is, I can elaborate for a second here, where normally I've got to condense, like we're four guys, we did this, now we're in a band, and then we will rock you, and it's like, you're not in that arena. You can actually just discuss it. And it was like every now and then you'd ask him a question, and it was like, like I hadn't really thought about that before. So let me actually consider what you're asking me. And it was just nice to because it was just like you've always said, the purpose of this show is to feel like you're sitting either in the conversation or just listening to the conversation. And that's definitely how it felt. Like you getting to know each other, and we're just watching.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, it stems from really it's having, I'm going to jump around now, but having arranged meetups in the UK and then attending yours that first time in Phoenix. I know we spent a lot of time in the car on a road trip afterwards, and we talked loads of stuff, and loads of it was rubbish, but a few good things came from it. And one of those things was the thought about protecting and recording and recapping or collecting all of the information that we've all got across the forum. And I just became very aware that partly through what I do for work, and partly just through thinking a little bit deeper about things, that at some point, and it's very morbid, but at some point all this information will be lost for forever unless someone catalogs it or collects it. And I started to think about what the best format would be for that. And I know, and Luke will know, that I did attempt to do some other sort of YouTubey stuff where I had like a completely different setup, and I'd played with recording AC30s and doing guitar stuff and trying to make rigs up and doing guitar reviews. And it wasn't really, maybe I wasn't ready for it, or maybe it wasn't the right thing at the time, or maybe I won't do it, although I'm hopefully going to be doing a little bit more of it this year. And I just thought that's not the right thing. And then it came to me, obviously you run a podcast, which we talked about, you work on a podcast and you have your own podcast. And I just thought maybe that's the medium for collecting this information, is I can speak to an individual like I would do at the meetup at the bar or during the day, and I can have a deeper conversation with them about what inspired them. Like, when was the first time they heard Queen? What was it about the sound of the guitar that made them go, what guitar is that? Because I remember mine quite vividly, and it inspired me on to do lots of different things. And so I just thought maybe actually recording those conversations that happen, those spur of the moment things at the bar when you go and get a drink. Oh, so what did you think of this? And you end up spending 20 minutes talking when you went for a drink for a minute. And get those people's stories, because actually this is pretty well documented, and the book has done a fantastic. Simon Bradley and Brian's book has done a great job of recapping the story of the Red Special pretty well, and it's got all the detail that you'd want. You can go online and find other stuff out, and the forum itself, that'll be there forever. The Facebook forum is a little bit difficult to navigate, as Facebook is, but you can go and find out about the guitar if you want to. And the deeper you go into that, you realize that some of the sites don't have the information quite accurate enough if you're like me and you want it as close as possible. But what we didn't have was a recollection of the individuals who make up this community and what their stories were and what inspired them and what they've gone on to do and how they've worked on the guitar, how they've met Brian, and all their own personal sort of journeys with this. And I just thought maybe the podcast is the right thing to do, because you can have a chat with someone and ask those questions and capture it and put it out there, and it's a snapshot of them at that point. So like yours is now over 2 years old, which is crazy to think that. And where's that gone? And 2 years have happened, so you've done some more things. So maybe we at some point can recap and catch up with you. I can see the faux fawn AC30 with an MV50 sitting in the background, which you built and put together, and I think you were building when I was first in Phoenix for the first meetup. So you've done more since then, but I think it's captured the bulk of your story up until that point, and then to add bits isn't as difficult as it.
Well, but there's something to that too, because you said it's slightly morbid to think about this, but I won't go into my podcast, but we have interviewed people, and some of them are pretty old, and some of them have died since we've interviewed them, and we've actually gotten stories and data that only they had, because it was just personal experiences that would be gone. Not that we're just this great repository of great data or anything, but it's just bizarre to think that, like, if we didn't record it, it would just be gone. We're actually putting a podcast out soon, and we're working on it right now, and we're doing a biography for someone, and there's no birth date for her listed anywhere online. So we checked in with her. She didn't remember even speaking to us. She didn't remember the show. So already things are missing. And so it may be morbid, but it's also reality, but to that, it's getting that kind of those kind of personal stories. They lead into the influence into how something was made. And so that's what's really interesting about it, because looking at the guitar, you could look at the guitar from any angle and it's objectively interesting and pretty and it sounds great. But the decisions behind those things, that's always what I've been interested in, because I've studied it long enough that I know most of the ins and outs, but now I want to know why things are the way they are.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's, I probably didn't get onto that too much with Brian. I didn't, when I spoke to him, I didn't want to get too into the nitty gritty of it, because didn't know how he would react to that, and I had a limited amount of time, and I wanted to capture what I
You
got.
could only
really,
go
but,
so far into the weeds.
but we you never know what could happen in the future. I'll say that, and it's a great thing though, Luke. And I think as well, for me, Brian's really well documented, and the guitar is really well documented. But some of the people we've had on the podcast that make up the forum, like Doug Short, to actually, we've all seen Doug's fantastic website, dsgb.net, and we've all watched his CNC videos and his most recent videos, and he did help both of us. But to actually get to speak to him and listen to him talk about his process in his podcast and how he thinks about things and works things through, unless you hear it straight from the horse's mouth, until you hear it straight from the horse's mouth, I think you're missing out on some of the wonderful things that Doug has done for the community and continue to inspire people to do. And I think that's the same for everyone. Until you hear it directly from them and understand who they are as a human and what's driven them to do that, and you realize, actually, although Doug's at a slightly different angle than I am, he was inspired pretty much in the same way I was. And to capture his story for people, and as an example, Doug's a great example. And then someone like Andrew Morgan at A Strings, and to track his history with Queen and that wonderful story about his guild, and that his nan got him and she's no longer with us, and how then he's gone on to create A Strings and opened a shop, or opened a website, opened a shop, and worked with Brian May and Pete Malandrone, and it's just great to capture that, because it is part of the history of it, and it's part of that history that isn't necessarily important to everyone, but to us in our little community, it's really
always interesting. It's always interesting because, like, I think of anytime I meet someone who's a big Queen fan, or Queen is their favorite band, I'm always kind of struck by, like, who's number 2 in that list, because there's something kind of unifying, I think, about being a Queen fan. Like, we all feel like we're in the same group, and then someone talks about someone else and you're like, what? Like, so it's always interesting to see how they wound up on Queen. And I mean, just to use Doug as an example, it's just knowing Doug as well as I know him now. It was fun to listen to his journey about finding Queen and then making it to the guitar, because he could have wound up somewhere else. And if you care about Doug, then now you have the story. If you don't have the opportunity to speak with him.
Well, and I think my own thing slightly for doing some of this is, it's something to look back on in years to come when I'm older and go, I spent my time trying to keep the forum going by informing people and providing information about the people that make up the forum. So Doug's one of them, yourself, obviously, Jonathan Planner, who's an absolutely fantastic chap, Woody and Ron, who do all the work now for the BMG, supplying parts and help loads of people, Matt Netherwood making pickups, Ariel is a fantastic guest and she's doing fantastic things at the moment, Andy Guyton making the time warps and just generally lovely, Pete Malandrone, who works, it's just capturing all those stories for the future generations. So if someone in 20 years listens to We Will Rock You and goes, wow, that guitar sound, that's absolutely amazing, who is that band? And they find Queen and they find the Red Special, and they go, oh, Brian's no longer here, what's the information, like, how do I find out? And they stumble on the forum and they go, oh wow, there's all these people that used to work for him or created this thing that I now love in 20 years time, 30 years ago, whatever it is. You've still got the history of the forum, although not necessarily collated on a website about who did what when, but you can go and listen.
It's not an encyclopedia, but
you can go and listen to those people speak and hear it directly from their mouth, and it's not been diluted or taken out of context or sound bin. It's, you go and hear that person.
Well, the other great thing is because of the way, love it or hate it, the algorithms on the internet work. You said all those people, but Ariel specifically, she's reaching a whole different market, let's say, community of people herself with her own music. But anyone who then dives into her music and her background and her guitar will go, so wait, why did she build this guitar like this? And then travel backwards, and she they find your podcast with her, and then start to find everybody else's, then that's a new Queen fan being born.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, and that's the fun of it, and that's the interesting thing is I've talked about all the old heads that we've interviewed on the podcast and my friends I've spoken to for years, and the people I go to. But then you've got the likes of Andrek, who now edits the podcast for me, who is a 17-year-old kid in California who's just into it, pretty much we'll hear from him at some point, I'm sure.
He's got the hair.
He's got the hair. He's building a guitar. He's got the amps. He's an absolutely phenomenal player for his age. Really lovely chap. Really, like, you couldn't ask to meet a nicer guy. I know you've been doing some work with him on the US Meetup for 2023 as well. And, he's fresh into all this, and he's got all this learning to do, but he's got an idea of who everyone is already, and what makes people tick. And you've got names on the famous people in the forum, like Mark Reynolds and Peter Michalowski and Mike Ride, and these names that get bandied around, that if someone says something, then that must be the right thing because that person said it. And you get to listen to those people and have an introduction to them. So if you were to attend a meetup and see yourself or any of the people that I've met, straight away what they're like and what they sound like. And it's less difficult saying, "Hi Luke, I'm John from the UK. You don't know me, but I've watched all your videos. I saw your podcast." And
I was at your meetup and I was introducing myself to people, and more than once somebody said, "You're Luke," and I was like, "Ah." So there you go. It's like, well, you've just kind of gone over a hump. Like, okay, don't need to explain all that then, so it's nice. I mean, should we explain? Is this redundant? I mean, the only reason I think about this is because people who may have found your podcast because of Brian. Should you explain what the meetup is? Because we just keep throwing this term around.
Yeah. So it's a good point. So when did I? Well, the meetup is the Red Special Guitar Meetup, and the one that I arrange it in the UK in recent years. It actually started in 2002, January 2002. A chap called Adam Bent, who was at last year's UK Meetup, who arranged the first ever meetup in Sheffield, and it pretty much set the theme out for how they've all been, really. And I've just basically borrowed some of his ideas and brought them forward. But the idea is that people of the Red Special community that want to get together in person, which was born on the internet, to try and break down some barriers, and also to go, this is my guitar and this is what I've done and this is my amp, and show it off in person, because you can only do so much through video and pictures and forum posts and Facebook posts. Before she goes, "I'm not interested, just go outside and get on with it."
Just go play.
Was to get people together in a room and like show each other's guitars and get to know each other a little bit more, so that when you are communicating on the forum or via social media, that you've got a better understanding of that individual. I don't think necessarily that was the initial intention, but it certainly helped throughout the years. So Adam did the first one in 2002 in Sheffield. It's been done various iterations over the years since then. So we're now in 2023. So Meetups are 21 years old this year. And you come along, whether you're a guitar player or you built a guitar or you're just interested in Queen or you're being dragged along by your dad. And you go into a room, and usually there's red specials from everyone. Like, it's a bit like a jumble sale or a yard sale, whatever you would call it, depending where you
car show.
Imagine tables around the outside of a room, and on them is a red special and whatever you've bought. And there's depending on which one you go to, between 30 and 60 odd people, and everyone's wandering around going, "And this is my Guyton Time Warp, and I've had it for 2 years now. You can play it if you want." No, everyone's brilliant usually, and people get to play all the different brands of red specials. So there's homemades, Guytons, KZs, supers, KZ supers, Dansans, Raymonds, Luke's famous guitar from the internet that he built, Doug's famous guitar that he built, and like everything and anything that's been inspired by Brian is fantastic builders there. Julian Hemingway, Peter Cole, Mark Reynolds, and Lee Spate. I could go on forever of the list of people that have attended that have built fantastic instruments, and it's such a dedication to do it and then want to actually show it off. And everyone comes along and we all talk about that. And then what I've done in recent years, and I think I've arranged 5 now in 6 years. So in 2023 will be the 6th one, because we had 1 year out for COVID. And what I've done is I just added a few extra bits to the day to try and make it, no, I wouldn't say a bit more special, but to give a bit of direction. And what I've done is I have a few set pieces and some guests turn up. So you come in and sit down or like mingle and chat, and then I'll interrupt everyone, just give everyone a brief intro, what's going to happen in the day and the likely things to go on, and some timings, and then I'll stop everyone chatting a bit later on, and we'll do a demo on what the Starlix sound is and how we achieve that if you want to, or then we might break again for a bit and then come back and demo some new cat products from Nigel Knight, and then we might have a guest speaker like Ariel turn up, or Justin Shirley Smith, or Pete Malandrone, or Simon Bradley, to name drop a few people, and we get to and we get to talk to them about something that's been going on recently, or that they're into at the moment, or that they've been doing with Brian, or it's like topical, or and people get to ask. So I will chat to them very much in a condensed podcast style, and then they usually will let me say, has anyone got any questions, and then I'll answer questions, and they stay and mingle and chat to people in the room. And then once we've done all that in the afternoon, we have a big band section, and if it's worked out, it's been pre-arranged who's doing what when, and then we get together. Last year, normally Dan Thomas would arrange it, but last year he was unable to attend, so Paul Cottrell and his son Josh arranged it, and Paul did a fantastic job of keeping that going. And Josh, Paul's son, was absolutely fantastic all day at not only playing the drums and then in some of the songs and just being, I mean, for a young kid being so interested in what was going on and being great, but also being really helpful in like coming to find you if your bit was next.
You're next. He was also great at the rock and roll ending, is what I call him.
Yeah,
the big drum ending.
That kid, he knows what he's doing. He's going to go places. He's already played drums for some cool people. And so and then we have the band section, and then what happens is we close down, and then we all hopefully go back to the hotel we were staying at, and the night continues with no guitars, where you just keep chatting. What I forgot to mention was the best way to experience the meetup is to go to the Friday night before, where you get all those introductions out of the way and you chat about all the rubbish
to drive.
And so then when you get to the meetup in the morning, you've already said hello to everyone, you know who 90% of the people are, and you can get straight into talking about guitars rather than hi Luke, I'm John, I've come all the way from Devon, how are you? And then
how was COVID?
And that was said quite a lot, and it's a great thing. I set out originally to do it because I wanted to spend some time with my friends in the Red Special world after having a hiatus for a few years, where some stuff in my life happened and I needed to sort myself out, and I had fallen into the Red Special rabbit hole, and I'd gone, I don't need this at the moment, I need to sort my life out. So I put it all to one side. I actually sold most of the stuff I had and kind of forgot about it for a bit, which is exactly what I needed. Not because it was causing any problems, just I needed the focus to do some other things and then come back to it. And when I did, I asked if anyone would want to come to the meetup. Sean Lever said, "Oh yeah, I'll come and I'll help you arrange today." He did a little bit. I probably did him disservice saying he didn't do anything, but Sean helped a little bit. So he helped me decide on what sort of location we wanted, and we really thought that if we were likely to get some of the Europeans come across, it would be good if it was close-ish to an airport. But also we had everyone traveling, and I was coming from Devon, so I could hold it in Devon, but that seemed unfair. We've got people like Doug from Scotland, and we really think UK and Europe. And we happened upon Reading just because it's closest to London, but it's just outside, so it's easy enough to get to.
If it's remote enough, you're not going to bother people to where you're at.
Yeah, definitely. And we happened across the village hall, and we liked it because it was remote, as you said. It had just about the right enough space, we thought, for what we wanted, and it had a bar so that people could get a drink partway through,
Yeah.
which is high on the list. And we took a chance in the village hall that year. We booked a hotel nearby, which isn't the one that we stay at now. And the first year went on, and I think we had about 18 people there, and I was overwhelmed with how it went and the support we got and who showed up. And it was great. And it was such a good feeling afterwards from everyone. I was like, this is brilliant. I'll do another one next year.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that, and so we managed to get Andy Guyton to come along, and we got the some super secret video which has never been shown, which will never be shown again, shown to us. And
Yep.
we did some stuff, and it was brilliant, and more people turned up. And then the following year we did it again, and some more people turned up, and each time we've changed a few things and got a bit better. And then I think it was around that point I decided that if I was going to do this properly, then I needed some help to do it, not necessarily because I needed the help, but I would like to involve a wide variety of people from the community to make sure it's not just what I want from the day, and actually it's what everyone wants. So I thought long and hard and picked various people I thought I could work with and trust that had attended the meetups, and I put together what is now known as the Fantastic Five, I think they call themselves, which is just a little community of people from the forum that have been to the meetups and love coming to them and understand and get from the same perspective as me what they're there for. And we decide on things like what's going on in the day and the hotel, and trying to work on things together. And they're there on the day to help me, so I don't have to do everything myself. And
Yeah.
I communicate with them about all the decisions that I make. So giving the title Friends Will Be Friends last year was something, although it would seem from the outside that maybe I came up with it, I think I did, but I put it to them with some other suggestions, and we had a conversation about what we all thought about it. And it seems like an insignificant thing, but I think it's really important to get the buy-in from 4 or 5 other people.
Yeah.
That the idea is a good one, and that then on the day we've got that collective view on why we're all there. And I think that works really well. And there's other people then that know why we're doing what we're doing. And if you go back from not just what the meetup is, but why it's there and why it's important, and you've got more people there on the day to help bring that message across, I think it works really well. And so that's the meetup. So it's a fantastic thing. You can check out, there's one in Phoenix in April.
Yeah. So I had been on the forum and watching all the fun you guys are having over there. And I did kind of what you did, but I just said, would anybody else put this thing on? Because I just want to go to one. I just want to show up and see it. I mean, frankly, I am that other part of you, which is like, I just wanted to go play everyone's guitar. Like, I just wanted to see them all, look at things close up. And I wanted to see a guild really bad. Because like when I was in school, the closest you could get was that guild. And two meetups later, Gonzalo came through and brought his guild out, and I was like, okay, that made it all worth it, because I've been waiting for, I don't know, 20 something years now just to be able to play that guitar, and it was great. But yeah, I mean, it definitely started that way of like, I just want to see gear, I just want to be in a room with all these things. And then obviously it turned into what you're talking about now, and like what the reason for this podcast is because you just meet these people and you realize you have a lot more things in common than just one guitar. And it's nice to see them again. And I'm doing the same thing you're doing this time, finally around the second time for me. I've got a little group and we're planning the next one, and April 29th in Phoenix. And it's only in Phoenix because no one else offered to take it up. And I basically just said, well, if I'm doing it, it's in Phoenix. There's no driving close enough to anywhere that's great for anyone else. So Phoenix, or someone else puts it on.
No, it's been really fun. I've been lucky enough to come to the first 2 that you put on.
Yeah.
And they were, what was nice was the first one especially was that I didn't have anything to do, although I think in the end I ended up helping. But that was
Well,
more of an on the day thing.
It was an on the day thing because everybody in the room, probably including me, was just kind of bewildered that it was actually happening, you know? And we were in this weird room where the lights, the strobe lights and the disco lights couldn't turn off. So it was just, we were all just being hypnotized by the lights. And then John was like, "Do you want me to start the thing?" And we're just like, "Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we're just here." And so, I mean, it was fun, but it was basically, I was the only one to play guitar the whole day because no one else
Yep.
wanted to play. But it
Yep.
was everybody had a good time. Everybody said they had a good time, and it was like,
Yeah,
it's surprisingly positive experience.
Definitely. Well, you don't know what to expect from them, and one of the biggest questions I get for people that are new attending is what actually happens and what do I expect? And
Yeah.
all the things I said at the beginning about Meetup, whether or not you play guitar, you just love Brian May, you built your own Red Special, you bought a Time Warp, you bought a dance amp, whatever. Everyone says, "Well, I don't know if I'll really enjoy it or if I'll fit in because I don't really do this. And I've never played with a band." I'm like, if you've never played with a band, today's your lucky day because you can get up on stage with no judgment and play with a band, and they've never played together before. So you're in exactly the same boat. No one cares if it goes right or wrong because
Exactly.
everyone just appreciates that you're having fun and you've never played with a band before. So actually, it's probably better if you haven't, because then you can come along and try it, see what it's all about.
I think, frankly, I think I found that kind of maybe the most rewarding part of it, especially for other people, because you've sat in your room playing We Will Rock You by yourself, and it's fun. Playing to the record, it's fun. But like when you've actually got drums there and you've got the big rig, and whether or not people are watching, whether or not the lights are strobing, it's just fun to actually work it out and feel the guitar vibrating in your hands and just go, yeah, this is cool. Because I think that will either kind of lock you on the path to like, I'm going to do this more, or it's trial by fire and you're like, meh, but I'll stay in my bedroom, but it's fine. But it is that experience of like, nobody really cares because we've all been there. So there's no judgment. Nobody's paying to see you play. You're just having a good time. And as evidenced by when you tapped me on the shoulder at the last meetup and you're like, "You're up." and I had forgot that you asked me to learn the bass line to Father to Son. And I crashed and burned, but I was having a good time.
Yeah. I kind of
nobody cared.
No. And Satsuki, who came all the way from Japan, who'd asked someone to play it and you'd said yes to. I mean, there's loads of great things at the meetup last year, but one of the best things for me was seeing this young guy from Japan, Satsuki,
came all by himself,
all the way from Japan on his own, and he turned up at the hotel and introduced himself, and then was quite nervous around us all. But then by the time we got to the band section and he played the next morning and into the night, that night of the meetup, he's like a different guy. He's so much more relaxed in our company, and you got a lot more respect for him. And his playing now, you watch him, some of the videos he's putting out, and he's like, blimey, Satsuki, you've either been inspired by everything or you've just been working really hard. But like,
or he's been keeping his light under a bushel.
Yeah, definitely. But as a outsider watching, to stitch you up and tap you on the shoulder and remind you you're going to play it, to see him get excited about playing it and the fact that you were there doing it and what it meant to him, it doesn't really matter what your experience is yourself, because that guy that you've just helped out, even if you don't necessarily think you've done it right and it's messed up a little bit, he was so pleased to get to play with people. It's worth it, 100%.
I mean, I was, exactly. I mean, I was thrilled to help him out, and I don't know if I did, but I just thought, like, man, that was a to come all the way from Japan and to go, we're gonna play Father to Son, 6-minute epic. Let's figure it out. It was like, wow, okay. I mean, I'm definitely not gonna chicken out. If you're gonna do it in front of all these people, I'll do it. I mean, Clayton was there, Pete was there at some point. It was like, it's fine. We're just doing it.
No, it's good.
It was fun.
I mean, no, I rewarded you later. We got to play guitar with Ariel and play the Forbidden Song. tie your mother down. um, which is awesome. And yeah, it's just nice, isn't it? You see these little, like, I remember the year before, which you weren't at. It's I don't want to do disservice to it or make it seem trivial, but one of the highlights for me was seeing Lee Spate and Doug Short get to spend the evening together on the table at the meetup meal. And it's like the perfect match of people to speak to each other about building guitars and electronics. And it's two gentlemen with very similar thought processes on how things should be done that had never met in person. You put them together on a table and you kind of check in every now and again. I always feel responsible for the whole weekend. So you're like, excuse me if you find me at your table going, how are you? You having fun? Is there anything you need doing?
Everything okay here?
Yeah. But to see those two, like, I don't know, I was just watching them that night and you could just see the level of conversation going up and the smiles coming out and things like that. You can't buy those things. You can't, it's just great to see it. And you're bringing people together with similar interests and chucking them into those situations and realizing they've got a lot more in common, and you're helping build those friendships that last across not just the forum about the Red Special, but like us, Luke, I generally mean we speak most days pretty much by messenger about something. And yes, we talk about the Red Special and all those things, but we talk about loads of other stuff as well, mainly movies and quoting film lines to each other. But there's a whole host of other things that it's brought us together to do and gone on to put together that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't done it. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think we mainly started talking because I was like, all right, so I'm going to do a meetup. Can I have all your notes?
Yeah.
So kind of where it came from. So next year's meetup, I mean, are you going to change anything? Is there going to be any big change ups?
So, I mean, I could probably say now in this one, because although it's January, by the time this comes out, it'll be a bit later, a bit closer to us releasing it. So only real big change this year is ticket sales. We're going to release ticket sales to the people that attended last year first to see if they take them up. The numbers are still going to be limited like last year to 65 because that's a good number, and it just about worked last year. So we don't want to go mad and invite 100 people and then the room and they feel wrong. And I think it's with a venue and the amount of guitars and people, it just about worked. And the considerations are, if the weather's not very good, we can't break out into the outside to have conversations. Everyone's going to be inside. So can the room hold that amount of people for the whole day? So that's where that comes from. So we're going to release the tickets initially when I announce it to the people that bought them last year. So expect an email, and I'll let you know when that's coming, probably through social media and YouTube. So those people will get like a week or so to decide before, if they haven't then bought their ticket within that period, then we'll release them to general. And that's to protect the people that have invested in coming. So it's, I don't think we'll get all the internationals. I don't know if you'll come this year, but you made the effort to come last year, and so it feels like you should be offered the chance to come this year. And the reason for doing that is, and I always say this every year, and I always, to me, I sound like a broken record saying it, which I probably need to get over, but I never know who's coming on the day. So, and what I mean by that is, I obviously know who's bought a ticket, but I invite guests like Andy Guyton, Andrew Morgan, Ariel, Pete Malandrone, Nigel Knight. In recent years, I've been fortunate enough to actually get to know those people and have contact with them and be able to get in touch with them myself. And so I invite them to the meetup, and I always say, I appreciate you might not be able to come and you might not know till the day. And it's usually very likely that Nigel won't know until the day before whether or not he's got to work and whether he's free.
Yeah, so you can't advertise it.
So I can't say Nigel's coming. I think Pete Malandrone, the same. I don't know if Pete can make it. I didn't know. We'd spoken in the week about Brian maybe donating some things to the raffle, which was absolutely amazing. And those things Pete would just throw away. I think meant the world to the people in the room.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. And I was told that those things would be given, it would get there to the day, but I didn't know Pete was coming to bring them himself, probably until late on the Friday night when I got an email from him saying I'll be dropping these things off. Ariel, I never know if she's going to come and turn up. She's always invited. She luckily enough was in the country this year, able to come. And then the big one, the one we've all sort of hope will come one day, and who pretty much in the podcast said if he was free would attend. The man himself, Dr. Sir Brian Harold May, CBE, has said he will attend at some point. Now, I will invite him as I would do normally, and I've been inviting him for the last 6 years. Actually, now got contact with him in a way to get hold of him personally, and so I will be able to say this is going on. Would you like to come? I can't guarantee that he's coming. So although it's going to generate people wanting to buy tickets because Brian might be coming, and I've already seen an influx of communications to say that to me, oh, if Brian's coming, I'd like to buy a ticket to the meetup. I can't guarantee it. And I don't know if he'll turn up this year, or if he was just being nice, or if it'll be next year or the year after.
Sure.
And I don't want people to come just because he's coming, but also if he is coming, then I want to say thank you to the people that have been. So I think the pre-sale, a long-winded answer is I think we should pre-sell the tickets for the event to the people that came previously.
Members,
and then if anyone else, if I've got spare capacity, I'll release them and let everyone know. And then it'll be on a first come, first served basis. We've got the ability to add in a waiting list, and so we can do that this year. And then if people are unable to attend, then through me I can then go to the next person in the list and do that way.
I think that's only fair. And I mean, I think you have the regulars who will show, so I think it's fair to them to be able to do it. I think like you said, the kind of international people, I mean, speaking about my own, it was a little bit like trying to get people to come here from England. It's like there was a time when international travel, across continents was a once in a lifetime thing or once in a decade thing, not every year. So completely understandable. But for your regulars, I think, I think you got to take care of those people. So perfectly understandable. I did wonder if you could put it out to 2 days at some point, because I thought there was so much gear that I definitely didn't get to see it all. And it could almost be a car show or like a swap meet where you just look at gear all day and talk about gear all day. And then the next day is demos and discussions and things like that. But that's a big commitment.
Well, it's something we've talked about. And again, we've considered lots of different things, and we've considered different venues and scaling it up. And I wouldn't say we'd never consider it, but at the moment, with the size that it is and the number of people that come and the number of people that we can hold in the current location, how we do it is probably how we're going to do it. We could potentially hire the hall for the Sunday, but do you then leave all your gear in it overnight, or do you set up, take down, set up?
Well, that's what I thought. I thought you'd have all the gear set up the first day, take it home or to the hotel or whatever, and then the second day would be just the required gear for the band section, things like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's just an idea. It's like at some point it will get, but I think you'll know. I think based on the amount of emails you get, it's like, well, if we're getting 500 emails about people asking for tickets, maybe we need to go to a bigger hall.
Yeah, and I think we'll naturally know. And I'm always keen to keep it as the community spirited, sort of people focused event that it feels like it is. So it's more, to me, it's always more about the people that are coming rather than the gear that they're bringing. And I think, I don't mean this in a nasty way, but once you've played a Guyton, you've played a Guyton, and I mean, I love playing mine. I would never never not
I
play
love
it.
playing yours.
Yeah, but it's yeah, and you can do that at the meetup. You can't. I mean, that's the other good reason for meetup. You can't buy these things. You can't go into a guitar center if you're in the States or
No.
into a local guitar shop and pick one of these things up. They don't exist. Yeah, you might find the odd place with a BMG, but that's a different experience playing than something with a correct tremolo and bridge.
Yeah.
So at the meetup you can, and treble boosters, no one sells treble boosters apart from online. And if you were new into buying this stuff, you can wait till the meetup, go to one, find out what a guitar feels like, AC30 to a treble booster, hear it, get to experience it, and go, that's the thing for me, or not.
Yeah, but I mean, because within 5 or 10 minutes, though, kind of like you're saying, I mean, if you picked up a Guyton, you picked up a Guild or a BMG or a Homemade, you can kind of go, okay, like within my price range, this is the thing I want to shoot for. But then you can actually play it. You can, I mean, there's some amount of like a free play section where you're letting people, mostly the new people, because everybody at some point will have done it, and you go, okay, let somebody else play, and you get those people going, okay, here's what I need. I need a treble booster. I need an AC30. Probably need an attenuator in my house, but which guitar? And then if you can kind of see them all, it's like, it's very, very helpful. Because if you're an obsessive person, who I think everybody in this group is, it's nice to be able to just touch them and go, this will do it for me, and this one won't, or this is too expensive, or whatever it is. And it's just looking at pictures online is one thing, and then seeing them is totally a different thing. So
definitely. And and you get to experience it all. So you can, Rustin's feels different to Nitro, for example, and you can see it and smell it.
And how much does that matter to you?
Yeah, and you can actually pick it up and go, I like the way this Rustin's feels, or I don't like the fact that 3 of those Homemade guitars have cracked Rustins, or or whatever it may be.
I do wonder if Brian knows how much like pain he's causing people with Rustins.
Yeah, but I always give back. Like Brian didn't have any problems with it, and
but it's just one of those things to kind of aspire to anyway. So
yeah, my Guyton doesn't have any problems with it, and my Homemade doesn't have any problems with it. So my experience of doing it is, it's all right.
Yeah. I think that's with everything.
Yeah, but yeah, you get to check all those things out and see them firsthand and hold them and smell them. And I think smell's really important thing that we don't talk about. And I love the way this smells. It's random, but
so I like in short, come to the meetup, hold and smell some guitars.
And
come next year.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, and then there's something else that might be happening on the day that would be really cool if it pays off, but I won't say, because if it doesn't, then no one knows, and we can just continue as normal. But there's some good plans for this year, and some good people hopefully lined up to come. And
so start putting your pennies and your dimes away.
Yeah. Well, I say this to the meetup guys as well. The Frantic 5 is, if none of the gear turned up and just the people turned up, after you've been to one, I think people would have just as much fun as they did with the guitars. And as long as we keep it focused on people and individuals, then I think we won't go far wrong with how the day goes, because it's about how you experience it. It's just fun, and it's
I mean, my takeaway from the last one was I mean, the actual day was over, the dinner was over, and then like the next day everybody was leaving, and I was like, I barely spoke to Mark Reynolds, and like we used to talk over the forum a lot, and I was like, I'm gonna go find Mark Reynolds. And it was like, luckily I still got to actually talk to him, so it was nice. But it was it wasn't like, what I didn't touch and smell was this treble booster. So
no, it's but it's and I think that proves the point.
You could smell Mark Reynolds.
Yeah, well, you could do. He doesn't like it too much. You have to ask him first nicely.
Well, you have to ask everyone, but that's fine.
Yeah, he takes payment in sixpences as well for it. He doesn't. Don't do it. He won't be very happy.
But ask.
Yeah, no, but it's a good point, Luke. And it is people. You're not searching out. You do go and look for the Guyton time warp, because it's there, and you know it's there. And people would come up to me and go, "Right, if I pick it up, like, you crack on and do what you want with it. It's a guitar." And they pick
Yeah.
it up and play with it, and then they come back and talk to you about it because they're interested in you and what your experience with it, and they go and find Andy Guyton and talk to him about the process of building it. And so the gear is quickly superseded by the individuals. And this stuff, because
Yeah.
it's not mass produced, it's definitely more about the person that built it and the skill of that person to build it, and whether
Oh
it's
yeah. Yeah.
something built by a professional or like yours and your background that you built that we've all been able to see your videos on. Actually, it becomes more than, especially I think maybe it's a little bit different if you haven't, but when you have built one and you know what goes into it, to then look at a room full of them and then be able to go and look at the joins and go, how did you do that so well? And
Yeah.
your respect is for the person that's done it, not the thing itself, even though the thing is
Right.
usually fantastic and beautiful, and anyone that's built one has gone through a lot of pain and suffering to get to the end goal. I think you just build up respect for people's
No,
craftsmanship. And
exactly. That was, I mean, partially the reason I built mine. Well, partially was because I really wanted one and I couldn't find one. So, you and I share a motto, or the closest thing nearest to a motto is if you
yeah,
can't find it, you should make it.
yeah,
And we both did. And but I considered it kind of like Red Special University, because I was thinking I want to actually know why certain decisions were made, and why is this thing here? Why is this thing here? And then sometimes you're actually in there putting things together, and you're like, that's why that's there, and that's genius, and so, like you said, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, it does make you have more respect for the item, but when you pull out of that, you go, people that built this thing are amazing, and it gives you so much more respect for obviously for the home builders who worked it out, but for Brian and Harold, I mean, there's something to the sonic quality of it, which everyone will say no one sounds like Brian May, and
yeah.
at least some percentage of that is the guitar. And then there's the engineering behind it, which we all know and all love. But then when you look at that thing, it's really easy to mess up a guitar design,
Oh,
and they've really done something really well from just a design aspect. It's like it's really incredible on all sides. So I still want to know more about how we got there and how we got this
well,
thing.
I think those would be the questions if I was ever lucky enough to get to speak to Brian again. It would be to talk about what always amazes me, and I completely agree with everything you said, Luke. But what fascinated me with it is I started this journey when I was 17, so 21 years ago, which seems far too long to have been doing this because I'm only 18. So
Yeah,
how can
it's a
that
long
21 years have
year.
gone?
Yeah,
But I studied to become an engineer to begin with in my career. And engineers generally look at how things work and making sure that they go together really well and that they're structurally sound and stable and do what they're meant to do. We don't
yeah,
always consider the aesthetic or have an eye for making things look right. This is a thing of beauty. It's the
yeah,
the proportions of the scratch plate to what you can see of the body of the guitar are perfect in my opinion. And I know that's because we've looked at it so much, but taking away the fandom of it and looking at the ratios of space and
yeah,
the curves and how they've managed to, it's not an easy thing to do. And there's professional guitar companies that release guitars that have people who are expert in this with all these years of experience and all these previous guitars that have come out that don't get it right today. And we're
yeah.
talking,
Well, and also you've got people still copying the Stratocaster design, the
yeah,
Les Paul design, the Telecaster.
yeah,
There's only so many classic guitars, and that's
yeah,
one of them, and it's the only one.
yeah. And then you go back to, was it an engineer in a design studio, like someone that's been doing design for it? No, it's an engineer and a 16-year-old kid put it together and designed it.
Yeah,
I mean, that alone fascinates me and makes me so in awe of what Brian and Harold did. And then you go on to think, actually sounds amazing. It's really great to play. It's lasted
hmm
for nigh on 60 years now. It's been used and played around the world, and he's used the same guitar every night, practiced with it. It's, you know, it's in
And you
some
think
work.
of the songs that came out of it.
Oh,
So it's just, yeah, it's just these different layers of the guitar.
yeah.
And then there's this other layer, which maybe is kind of immodest to speak about, but it's partially the reason this guitar was made is because they couldn't afford one.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, like, you know, necessity is mother of invention. And so you can look at a lot of this stuff and go, why did they do that? And it's like, because they couldn't afford this. And so they said, we'll figure out how to make one of those.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing that always comes to mind is the fingerboard.
Yeah.
How he wanted ebony and they couldn't afford it, so they just dyed some oak black out of an old coffee table. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's the kind of thing I think, you know, it's hard to describe to other people sometimes, but when you're a maker, or, you know, you try to make your own things, whatever it is, when you kind of see people's problem solving skill set, it's inspiring in that way, because you can kind of go, I can kind of get their thought process here, and I can apply that to other things, and not just, I love this guitar and it's great. It's just, it's a, like I said, Red Special University.
Definitely. And it's just like, it's happy accidents as well. So they couldn't afford the ebony fingerboard, but so they painted the oak black. But I actually prefer the black painted Rustin's feel under my fingers than I do playing like a guitar with an ebony fretboard. So again, is that because it's the Red Special and it's amazing, or is that because that's how I actually feel? Well, I actually think it's how I feel when I play it. And you find this is really easy to play and quite quick, and it lends to certain things really well. But it
looks like a piano. It looks like a piano under there. It's like everybody, whenever someone says piano black, it's meant as a compliment, you know, because it's shiny and it's glossy and it's black, and it's like that's that neck.
But they just got it so right, and there are mistakes in it when they built it, and if you studied it enough, you'll know where they are. And what I always think is, a great engineer or a great builder of anything, it isn't what happens when it goes wrong or that you need to make everything perfectly, but it's what you do when you make a mistake in order to rectify it, and either make it something or do something with it, or how you overcome it. And there are some bits in it when you look through the original. If you look at Simon Bradley, the Red Special book, you can see where they've done something and tried something and then put it right. Some things that I only realized after looking at photos for 10, 15 years that I'd never seen before, and now all of a sudden I've seen them. Wow, I wonder if they did that. You look at it and go, of course they did that. They've made a decision, and then now I've built one that makes complete sense. They use that as the solution because they've used that on everything else. So
well, but that's the other side, you know, that's that thing, is problem solving. I mean, I never built a guitar before or really done any woodwork, and diving into this was like, that was my biggest takeaway. It wasn't even the fact that I finished it. It was the fact that I learned how to fix my mistakes along the way. And like, I apply that to everything. You know, something will happen, it's like, I can fix that, you know, and it's because I worked on that guitar. It's like, that's what I mean. It's an interesting kind of different kind of appreciation you get for it, and for the people mean Brian and Harold.
But it's also, like you said, you know, you build one and you created a thing that didn't exist before out of some bits of stuff that you've had, and it's a long time it takes to do it. So it dilutes the effect of having a pilot or nothing, buying some wood and bits of metal, and then it turns into
because you gotta bleed into it a little bit for it to come to life, you know.
I remember cutting my finger really badly one day, and then I had a meeting and I was like ghost white in the meeting because I severely sliced my finger. You come out of it with this whole, like, you end up with this thing that you've made that didn't exist before, and you know every part of it, and you know what you did wrong with it, and but you've learned along the way, and you really do have those skills then to think, you know, it's a bit like what I would say with talking to Brian. It's done the same thing as saying, like, I built a guitar, and I made some mistakes and I've overcome them. I've now interviewed my hero, and I feel like I can talk to anyone, and that's something I didn't have before I did that, and now I do. And it's given me some more confidence to speak to some other people and to approach other people I maybe wouldn't have in the past about just in life in general, really, not just for the podcast. But
yeah, well, I thought about this recently too, just for other reasons. But I mean, some people say, don't meet your heroes, whatever. Some people aren't impressed by celebrity or fame or whatever, which I get. But I was kind of thinking about that recently, and I wonder if there is something to the fact that, like, the reason we sometimes hold people on a different level isn't because we just think they're great. It's because we're influenced by them, and because we go out and do things. And I think, creative people, I think, need influences. And when you've got a big one in your life and you get to meet that person, yeah, it's going to be overwhelming at first. But then once you get through it, like everybody says, everybody's just people. And it's 100% true. But kind of until you've gone through it, it's not easy to comprehend. It's also not easy to comprehend if you've never met someone like that, which is what I meant about my bookstore story, which was watching people kind of just melt into their own face because they're faced with that reality, and it's like, I get both sides of it. So
I mean, no, 100. I feel like I've met him online, so through Zoom. So I've had a conversation with him. So I think, like, if I met him in person, it would be a different interaction than before.
Well, he's much taller.
Yeah, hello. And I'm much smaller than I look. But I think, like, that would help me with the conversation because we've spoken at great length. But I still think I'd be a quivering wreck if I met him in person. In a way, I'd hope to have met him to do the podcast and to be in the room with him. But in another way, I'm so glad the first interaction with him was through a lens, so that there was that little bit of protection and that shield around me. I think if we'd been in the room together, I don't think I'd have been as confident or as got to the point I did with the questions. I was like, and we got to.
Well, maybe it's a perfect thing then. But I mean, that's the other kind of neat thing about Zoom and this. Not neat thing, but I mean the fortunate upshot from COVID, and which is everybody's kind of been stuck in their own room, and including Brian. And the fact that the technology's advanced to this level that we can actually do this, I mean, even Brian, imagine if Jimi Hendrix could just call him up on the phone, you'd still be like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy, because it's not hero worship, it's not whatever, it's just, this is someone I'd really like to communicate with.
Yeah.
And I live in Phoenix, so I can't do it. But through Zoom, you can do it. So it's a fortunate upshot.
No, definitely. And it's he was just good. And you never know what's going to happen.
So we're big fans.
Yeah. So we like the Meetups. We like Brian May.
We like Brian May. Yeah. We can smell treble boosters. So the question I think you asked everyone: when did you first hear Queen?
So my first memory is I was at my nan's house. I can't remember when. I was quite young, I think. I must have been early teens, like 12, 13, 14, around that age. And Wayne's World was on TV. And I thought, this is funny. I think my uncle quite liked when it originally came out. I don't think it was when it originally came out because I'm not old enough to have seen it. But my uncle used to like it. So it was on because he used to live with my nan. And it was on, and the Bohemian Rhapsody section came on when they're in the car, and everyone knows it, and the headbang. And I was just blown away. I was like, what is that song? That's one. I think the scene just inspired me, and one, to really enjoy the film and to want to watch Wayne's World again, but two, to try and find out what that song was, because it was perfect. And I think I spoke to my parents and said, or my sister, I said, do you know what song that is? And she said, I think it's Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen. And then I spoke to my mum and dad and said, this song, Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen, what's that all about? Where can I hear it? And I was produced a cream-coloured cassette that was my dad's, which is really random because I'd never really thought of my dad as listening to music until until I was given it. And he doesn't really listen to me. He does more now in later life, but at that point he was quite focused on, pardon me, his work. And I was produced this cassette, and so it's Queen's Greatest Hits one, or Queen's Greatest Hits at that time, and I had a Sony Walkman, and I just listened to it day in, day out, going to school, and fell in love with all the songs to the point where I knew like how long to hit rewind on. Don't Stop Me Now is probably my favorite song of the whole album. And
Yeah.
I used to get paid to cut the grass at home, and I would have my headphones on, my Walkman, and I'd listen to Don't Stop Me Now. And I didn't know at that point I wanted to play guitar, but I knew I liked the sound of that guitar, and I knew the music spoke to me. And I'd be outside cutting the grass, and Don't Stop Me Now would finish, and I'd press stop, and then I'd know exactly how many seconds to hit rewind for to go right back to the beginning of the song, so I could listen to it again, so that I could visualize and make, I don't know what the right word to say is, but to try and understand like where the song changed and when the solo was, and understand the sounds that were coming from it. And it was, I don't think it was the, no, it wasn't. No. But I don't think I was even necessarily inspired by the guitar originally. I think it was the overall combination of Queen. And then you sort of, 91, Freddie died, and that was in the news, and they had loads of footage of him on. I remember not really knowing what it meant because I was too young, but knowing that something important happened, and it was on the TV, and mum and dad were sad, and it was on loads of him at Wembley with a yellow jacket on. And we talked about it at school, and people would be like, oh, he's the greatest showman there ever was. It's like, I don't know what that means because I'm not old enough to know what that means. And like, how do you know that? And it's like, well, my mum told me. And
how do you know?
What's the sort of question you ask when you're young and naive? How do you know that? What makes you say that?
Yeah,
that guy that died in the news. So that was kind of it. Bohemian Rhapsody, and then listening to the tape. And I used to like, it's crazy. I used to play a lot of basketball, which I'm quite sure if anyone's ever met me, I'm about 5'7.5". And growing up, I played basketball at school, and I was quite good at it. And I ended up playing from at a school level. I played for the adult team, and then I was asked to go and play for a team locally, which I didn't do because of the commute. But that was to go into actually playing properly, and I never did it. But before I would play, I would listen to We Are the Champions and We Will Rock You.
Yeah. Get pepped up.
Yeah, definitely. And it used to really like, I think that comes from watching films that used it, that are influences, not necessarily basketball films, but I think they used it in the Mighty Ducks or something, when those transformational scenes or something, or when they come out from, like, you watch the NBA and they'd come out from
the entrance
players.
Themes.
I think they might have used Another One Bites the Dust on a TV show in the UK called Gladiators. When they used to have this hanging ring thing, and someone would fall off, and they'd play the bass line, and Another One Bites the Dust. And so it kind of like associated the music with an outcome, maybe, or the music with a theme behind, like a theme of life. And so those two songs specifically used to spur me on and get me going before playing sport. And it became a bit of a ritual in the end to listen to it before I went out and played. I'm sure it helped me because, well, it must have, because I always did it and I did all right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, music energizes you. It brings you up, I kind of wondered, is there a song? I mean, I'm not going to divert from your story, but my dad did the same thing. My dad saw that Freddie had died, and he went out and bought the same two records. So over here, they were called something else. They're Greatest Hits and Classic Queen. But he had those, and I eventually like inherited those, and that's how I got into it. But so I think we had pretty much the same track listing. But I wondered if there was a song on there or any, later that like challenged your actual musical taste. Not just challenged it, but something that you actually grew to love. Like where they took you on a journey? Kind of putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you don't really, you've got to think back now and think. So,
Well, if you're listening to Don't Stop Me Now and We Will Rock You, you were kind of in that kind of 70s phase,
yeah,
I think. I started kind of at the later stuff and I went backwards.
yeah.
And then,
So I think as well, Luke, because I was younger when I first heard them, and I only had that one tape, and the internet wasn't even around at that point, so I couldn't go online and search YouTube and go and download Spotify playlists of all Queen songs of that had ever been. And although I was earning money, I was earning like £3 a week from my day job on a Saturday. So there was no way I was going in. I hadn't even considered that there was more music out there from Queen on this tape, because how would I know? And my parents didn't have Queen albums lying around. That was the only Queen we had. So I was really stuck with the Queen's greatest hits. I'd say the one song that maybe made me question a few things, but I grew to love, and I absolutely love it now. And the reason I say it made me question a few things is because when I was listening to it once on the school bus, someone nipped a headphone out and stuck it in, and I got questioned. I wouldn't say bullied, but like, what is this that you're listening to? What are you listening to? Was the song Flash?
Okay, yeah.
Because but it kind of made me want to listen to it even more, and I think, yeah. And then in later
kind of
life,
emboldens you into to kind of consider these other choices,
Yeah, and then it wasn't until I was 17, 18 when I was at work, trained to become an engineer. I actually dropped out of school, or not school, but I dropped out of college doing my A levels, and my dad said, "If you want to do what you want, son, but you need to go and get a job and think of something that you can use forever." And I was like, "I'll do a trade, because the trade's good. I always got a trade, pretty good with my hands. Used to work with my dad fixing shoes and cutting keys, and so if I learn a trade, I've always got it, no matter what happens." So I went off to become a plumber, and they said, "No, sorry, John, your grades are too high to be a plumber. Maybe you could be an electrician." So I went off to become an electrician. Really, is what I wanted to do. But the company I went for, like, "Nah, you come in the office with us, and we'll train to become an electrician, but you can train to be an engineer as well." And so I started earning money, and then when I started earning money, that was good, because then I bought a guitar, which was a black Squire Stratocaster thing, but it also meant that I was at college 2 days a week, one doing the apprenticeship and one doing the engineering course. And it was staggered a bit. So I did a year of apprenticeship, and then after that I started the engineering course. So I've been at college for a while doing that. But in the afternoons at college, I'd been put, or in the whole day, I'd been put with the adult learning group to try and get me through my apprenticeship quicker, because my boss wanted me to get that qualification and then do the engineering. So what that meant was I was with a load of adults in the whole day, but why they were there is usually because, without being a disservice to them, it was their second chance at career. They were like adult apprentices, so they were on a faster track course through, because they weren't messing around, because they all knew that this was their chance to become an electrician and learn and be qualified. And so everything was done a little bit quicker and a little bit less spoon-fed, because it wasn't a bunch of 16-year-olds that didn't know what they wanted to do. And so I was in with these adults, but in the afternoon they had to do key skills, which is English, math, and science. And fortunately, I'd done pretty well at those at school in my GCSE, so I didn't have to do that. So I was given a laptop, where they were all on a course learning online learning. I was given a laptop and told, "There's nothing else for you to do, John, this afternoon, but here's a laptop, and go and do what you want." And that's where I went back to myself with the internet then in existence. What guitar does Brian May play? And happened across brianmayworld.com, found the original forum there, which is the old black and red site, found a whole load of individuals there that thought this is really interesting. I found RS Custom guitars in America who had sound clips of
Mm-hmm.
the trisonic pickups playing through an amplifier, and went with headphones on in college. And this is the sound. These people have got the sound. How have they
They've
got?
done it.
How have they done that? And then, of course, you start reading it all and find out that Brian made his own guitar, and you're like, "What? He made his own guitar?" And pictures on the internet weren't great that day, and these sound clips,
Mm-hmm.
they took like 5 minutes to download for a 10
Yep.
second clip. So I sat there at college like, "Come on!" Um, and so you start to learn about it. About that time, the Burns guitar was released in Guitarist, so I started buying Guitarist magazines. And Simon Bradley, you were a catalyst to all of this. By every time I was interested, a Guitarist magazine would come out with an article on something Brian had done, or
Yep.
how to play like Brian, or a new guitar, a new bit of kit, or something that you put together. So thank you for that, Simon. And yeah, I went from college. I was earning money. I bought a black Squire Strat Pack from the local guitar shop and started teaching myself how to play some songs. I think
Yeah.
Summer '69. I bought one of those little books with a CD and taught myself to play Summer '69, which I was really impressed
Yeah.
with. At the time, I was like, "Oh, I've made it now. I can play Summer '69. That's
What else you got?
yeah, I've now conquered the world."
Yeah.
And then I started learning Queen stuff and realized I was completely out of my depth trying to learn Queen stuff
Mm-hmm.
on my own, and that this is going to be a lot harder than I thought it ever could be. And I was in a guitar shop one day, and it's one I would never usually go to in Exeter in the UK. It's still there now. And I was upstairs looking around, and I was like, "Oh, I don't like this shop. They don't have anything Brian May related in here. They don't sell Vox amps. So it's what a rubbish guitar shop." But they had all these books on guitars, guitar players, like the Learn to Play Like
Yeah.
Us,
Yeah.
rifling
I
through, and
remember those.
they didn't have Brian May, but I did turn around and notice that they had this like rotating shelf with VHSs on, so videotapes for those youngsters. It's a proper
Mm-hmm.
tape, and they had a Brian May Starlix VHS, and I think first time ever in my life, I just picked it up, didn't even look at how much it was, and took it over to the counter and bought it.
Yeah.
Um,
This is coming with me.
this is mine now. I don't care what this
Yeah.
costs.
Yep.
And took it home excitedly to plug in, and my life was changed forever. It was.
Yep.
I just remember watching it in that first the Starlix intro,
Mm-hmm.
ding, and how he was sat and the guitar and how it looked, and
Yeah.
it was just like, one, you could see how homemade it was, which I'd always thought it was like this pristine thing from the photos I'd seen and the video footage from like Wembley, where, and bearing in mind I didn't have the Wembley DVD at that point because the Wembley DVD didn't exist because DVDs didn't exist. Um,
Yeah.
so I was able to watch this VHS and actually hear what he was doing, and I remember like watching it all without a
Mm-hmm.
guitar, and then like I need to make some notes and getting out an A4 pad, being like
Yeah.
homemade guitar, treble booster, um,
Japanese
and
sweater.
yeah, I'll, if you can't, yeah, I end up making those. You can buy those
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Yep.
And that's because of that. That's where that came from. That's because
It's
I've been searching for
it
years
just
for that
starts to,
sweatshirt.
yeah, like programs you, it's just right at this age, I think, where your brain is like forming and it's a little soft and things are getting in and they just kind of implant themselves. And it's
Yeah,
like I had the very similar experience. That Starlix video was like well used.
yeah. And then, of course, I had my black Strat, so I was able then to sit down and go, right, I haven't got the guitar he's got, but I've got a guitar, and I want to play Queen songs, which I've already realized are horrendously difficult. Let's sit
Mm-hmm.
down with the VHS and see if I can learn anything.
Yeah. I wonder
So
how
I
your
did.
experience compared to mine.
So, I mean, it was long-winded and it took a long time, but it wasn't too long before I could approximate the Tie Your Mother Down solo.
Yeah.
And again, although you got a little book with the tab in, I didn't actually think that was completely accurate. So I ended up drawing outlines of tab in my A4 notepad and writing down what I thought the tab was, and then listening to it, going, no, that's not right, and scratching it out and redoing it. And then I would take that I'd written and write it out properly. And I would sit in my room with the tab I'd written and play that until I was happy that I was doing it. And then I would listen again and go, oh, so he's actually, when he's doing the pull down, he's grabbing the string beneath, and you can hear that little bit of that.
Yeah.
So I need to try and do that. And yeah, I just spent loads of time with that VHS with a Strat. The Guitarist magazine came out talking about the Burns coming out, and I phoned up and I ordered one, and that was the most money I'd ever spent on anything in my life. And you had to, I think, I can't even remember how I paid for it. Did I pay? I might have paid for it over the phone, which is really something my parents had never phone people up and give them your card details. So I was being a bit against that. And then I wanted to buy a treble booster, and Greg Fryer had released the blue treble booster with the knob on it, the touring booster. And I think because that had been released, it's like, that's a treble booster, I'll buy that one. And then I bought a Vox AC30 TB with the green speakers because the TBX was too expensive. I bought it brand new, and that arrived. And I didn't have a treble booster, but I had it, and I turned up a little bit, and I was like, wow, this is loud. Put it in Brian May mode, and obviously not knowing what I was doing with my Strat at that point, I was like, this sounds horrendous. And then the Burns arrived, and that was a moment, opening the case up and being like, this is amazing. And then the treble booster arrived, and it all fell to place. I just couldn't play it very much because, one, I couldn't control it because my guitar skills were horrendous, and two, it's just horrendously loud, so I couldn't really do it when anyone was home. And slowly you get used to doing it, and then I think I bought a Weber Mini Mass from the internet, shipped from the States. Seemed to take like 3 years to arrive. It's probably more like 2 months, but then I was able to turn it down, and then I just kept playing and going until I thought that I sounded similar enough to what you would hear on the records. Which seems like a long time.
Was there any musical influence from your family? Did anyone musical in the family?
So my granddad used to play trumpet in several bands, I'm told, but we never really spoke about music. But my sister, Michelle, she was a fantastic pianist, and she was like grade 6 or 7 saxophone. So we always had music in the house being played. She also played a bit of guitar when I was younger, classical guitar, but never anything really too fancy, more intricate classical stuff. So we always had a classical guitar in the house that was hers, but my mum, I don't think, had really played an instrument. And we'd done stuff at school like playing the triangle and the recorder and all of that rubbish that you do that's no use to you. I mean, playing the piano is useful, but I don't think I've ever come across a situation where I've gone, I know what I need a recorder.
If you want to play that Celine Dion song,
you need that recorder. That's what they were using. But so not really. It's just more of like a self-discovery thing. And I think I just liked it because it was that the Brian May sound was very organic but quite electronic. It's an odd way of describing
amplified.
It. And I think the DT helps. Didn't know about that too much back then when I was reading about it all. And
did you learn all that stuff from Simon Bradley?
No, more the forum, I think. So the old school forum, people like Mark Reynolds and Matt Hutchinson. I'm trying to think of some of the other names now, so I don't not name drop people, but and lots of other people that I've mentioned already and whatnot were on there, and we used to have long discussions about what he was using. And then similarly to you, I think I wanted to find out a bit more, and rather than rely necessarily completely on what other people said, I phoned Pete Cornish one day. I think I was trying to order a treble booster, and I phoned up and I was like, he said, "Hello, Pete Cornish." I was like, "Hello, Pete. You don't know me. My name's John Underhill. I'd like to buy a treble piece." He's like, "Oh, I'm about to make some in a few months. Can you wait some time?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can wait. How do we do this?" He's like, "You send me a
Sure,
check
no
for this."
problem. I'll wait for no
Yeah,
problem.
but you don't know as a young kid who you're talking to, do you?
No, it's true.
Yeah, I ended up. He's like, "And who are you?" And I said, "I'm John Underhill, and I'm just getting into all this Queen stuff. And Queen are going on tour again soon. Are they? I must update my page with some Queen information," which was where that comes from, and why that's on there. And then he's like, "Thank you for telling me that. So what do you do then?" And I explained, "I'm an electrical engineer, and I'm doing like big industrial installation designs and stuff." I used to work with my dad, who was a shoe repairer. And he's like, "I've always been fascinated by shoe repairing." So he asked me loads of questions about that. And then he said, "Oh, my dad used to be a violin repairman." And so we were talking about like the techniques that his dad would use repairing violins. And I was talking about how you repair a set of shoes, like leather soled shoes, where you take the stitching out and then you replace the cork and then re-bolt them and whatnot. And we spent an hour, like literally, I was on the phone to him one day for about an hour and a half talking about how to repair violins and how to repair shoes. I'm sure I was just wasting his time and not letting him build things, but he seemed to enjoy it. And then, so he stayed in touch a little bit. But I found out some things from him which were really interesting about Brian's signal chain and some of the work Pete had done on the Red Special, which is on the page on his Pete Cornish website, replacing the jack socket and building what he thought was a DK amp, but isn't, is another little recording amp that he put together. And then some stuff he used to do to the AC30s, because apparently the explosives they used to use on stage would be quite close to the amplifiers, and they would basically blow the cones of the AC30s,
Wow.
which is why Brian ended up, partly one of the reasons why Brian ended up with so many. So Pete ended up reinforcing the cones on some of them with some mesh material, so that when the explosions go off, they wouldn't damage the AC30 while they were on tour and be unrepairable when they're somewhere in the world. And so then you start realizing actually there's lots more information out there than you know, and maybe the best thing is to start speaking to people, not because you don't trust what people are saying, but if people haven't asked questions, maybe those people haven't answered them, and maybe those people haven't even been asked those questions, and maybe,
yeah,
like most people, memories fail, and you need to actually go and speak to them.
Yeah, and false memories get planted and stretched out, and yeah, I mean it's good to get it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say.
So that, yeah.
So what was the first album you bought on your Queen journey?
So I think it was probably A Night at the Opera or A Day at the Races. Yeah. It's probably A Day at the Races. Definitely A Day at the Races. I think I probably bought. You used to be able to go into a music store and you could buy CDs, and I at one point owned every Queen song on every Queen album on CD. But yeah. I think it was a day. I think I went for A Day at the Races because I preferred the black cover and the design on there, and it had Tie Your Mother Down on. And I think because I'd been learning the solo, I wanted to listen to the rest of the song. Because again, the internet was pretty naff back then.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a case of Brian's played all these solos and I knew the songs they were from. I hadn't heard any of them. I was learning the stuff on Starlix, but he's like, and here's that little bit from Liar.
Like, what?
What? I've never heard that song. What's this song? Liar. I learned to play this. Yeah. I learned to play the stuff, not knowing what it was from. And then, of course, my interest was, let's go and find where these songs are and listen to where those bits are. And so you realize the significance of the parts he was playing or not in Starlix. And then you go, right, well, if I've learned to play this solo, I ought to learn the song that goes with it so I can play the bit that I know.
Yeah.
So I really started off there with Tie Your Mother Down. And I love it. The intro to that song is just, and it's a shame you can't do it live.
Yeah.
It's just cool. I remember sitting there listening to, like, being really excited with my headphones on, listening to it. I was like, finally, I get to know where this solo's from. And that starts. And Queen's great at doing what Queen do and getting you excited. And like, music, music's so important. We could talk about that for many hours, but yeah, and then finally listening to the song and then going, oh, there's the solo, and then going, oh crap, there's a whole load of more stuff, and it sounds like it's doing
Yeah.
something I don't know how to do.
Oh yeah. 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 I remember that from
And
Starlux too, of just going, wait a minute, you only gave me like half of this soul. Now I got to figure out the rest of it.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
so yeah, it would have been a day at the races, and then I would have gone back to a night at the opera, I think, and then started to buy more albums, and probably ended up just collecting them because going, this CD shop has 3 of them that I don't have.
Yeah.
And again, you couldn't order off the internet easily back then, so it wasn't a case of going on Amazon with 200 quid and buying all the CDs. It was, I have to go to a music shop and buy the CD, and if they haven't got it, then I either have to order it or I have to go to another music shop, and
Yeah.
they might not even
Yeah.
have a Queen section, or they might have just sold it. So I remember buying Flash. I was in Reading, and I bought it when I was at my sister's house, who was living in Reading, and we put it on and listened to the songs. And yeah, it's like listening to Arborea, the Dale's Love, or whatever it is, the love
Yeah.
song. And it's just like,
It's a little
what am I listening
difficult
to?
as an album for your first time through. Yeah, because you don't know what to expect. I mean, I remember having like a VHS tape. I can't remember what it's called, Magic Years, that like biography thing, and they start talking about Highlander, and the Highlander theme song comes on, and I was like, I need that,
Yeah,
that sound, and then I got that album, and it was like, yeah, it wasn't really a soundtrack, it wasn't a score, whereas
yeah,
Flash is a score. So when you
yeah,
put that on, you're not necessarily like getting, you know, songs in the same way as all the other albums,
yeah,
because like I did the same thing. I got to Flash and I was like, huh. Now I need to watch this movie.
yeah. But definitely, and that's same thing. I'd seen Flash at my nan's house, not realizing that all of those cool noises and some of the stuff was
Yeah.
Queen music, and so I put this album on at my sister's house, and it was almost like, oh, I've listened to this before. Not some of them I didn't recognize, but I've listened to
Yeah.
this before. Obviously, I knew Flash. I didn't realize they'd done the whole score for the film at that point. And so then you go back and watch it, and you're like, Christ, that music really makes the film what it is, really. And
Yeah.
what an influence on a film. And to have then
Yeah.
written a film score and hearing this thing come through so much as well is, it's quite eye-opening. And then I remember, like you, the Highlander, and realizing that it's most of the Magic album is on Highlander in some way. And I'd
Yeah.
watch the Highlander because one of my friends, a chap at primary school, oddly, had referenced Highlander when we were playing one day. And there's a chap called Jean-Paul Boulanger, who lived near us, but he also had a home in Belize. So his family used to travel between Topsham and Belize every year. And he would be in primary school for part of the year, and then they'd go back to Belize. He said, "Oh, I watched this film last night, which my parents didn't know about, and they had to chop people's heads off to become the one." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a cool film." And then
I want to be the one.
yeah. So we used to run around not having ever watched this and go, if you chop my head off, then you become the one. So like, can't they wear a steel thing around their neck so that they can't have the sword chop it? And so no, it doesn't work like that. So he told us about this film. And then when I was a bit older, I had a TV in my room and it was on one night. So I sat down and watched it, and I was like, this is amazing. This is the best. It's got James Bond in it. And
yeah, as
these guys
Juan
don't.
Villalobos from here.
Yeah, these guys don't die.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so again, then the realization that actually, when you really listen to it, like One Vision's in it, and obviously the Highlander soundtrack, and there's lots of other Queen songs. It's a kind of magic's in it, and yeah, you just go down to listening to everything they've ever put together and thinking this is amazing.
I sometimes wonder if filmmakers are like, I'm gonna make a movie so I can get Queen on my soundtrack, and we'll figure out a movie. I don't know. There's like people that fly, and there's a guy that throws a football, but we need Queen to score the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's like just an excuse to work with Queen sometimes.
definitely. Yeah. Well, if I was making a movie, I'd be thinking the same thing. So
yeah. So I guess when did you like single out Brian, or when did you single out the guitar? When was it like I'm going down this entire rabbit hole? Because I think there's something to finding the guitar. I think there's something to yeah, the guitar is unique and I probably need that. But then all the other stuff that comes with it.
I think again it was quite young, so it's around that college time where I started reading the forum, and I was like, you start reading this thing, and again, information. It wasn't like today, so it's not like you can go on the Red Special forum and on the Facebook forum and go, oh, it's a homemade guitar, and you can quickly read like 20 posts and understand what's going on with it. You really had to find the forum and then dig deep, and it was forum posts, so it wasn't like a feed that's feeding you, and you like there's no algorithm. It was literally spending hours clicking
Just
on
trolling. Yeah.
and reading through comment after comment after comment after comment, trying to put this thing together. And so you start to get nuggets of this is a homemade thing. And having worked with my dad for most of from when I was about 10 or 11 in the shop, repairing shoes by hand and cutting keys and building things at home and making things, to understand that this guy had built this thing with his dad was kind of unique, and that they'd built a guitar from scratch, literally from scratch, rather than like I knew you could buy like a strap body and whatnot from looking at the back of those guitar magazines where they had listing. You used to open the magazine up, and in the middle there'd be a centerfold where a company was mail order, like you could buy all these different parts.
Yeah.
So I was aware that that was different, and then the engineering questions came from me. It's like, oh, how is this thing put together then? Because it's been veneered, so why has it been veneered? Why is the side veneer in the pictures that I now can see, because the internet starts to get better, different to the way I would necessarily expect it to be? And why have they done that, and how's this? And then I understood that it's blockboard, because you read about blockboard. So like, what is blockboard? So it's strips of naff and wood stuck together and sandwiched. So you start to ask the question, how's it been put together? And again, you start looking at it slightly differently then, because you go, well, actually, it's two halves put together. You read about that, and then someone had drawn a visualization of how the knife edge worked. So that's actually pretty cool. And again, they made that at home. That's, if they made it at home, maybe I could make it at home. And starting to go down that road and getting like excited about the thing, and like telling my parents, Brian May made his guitar at home with his dad when he was 16. They made it out of scrap, and it's an old fireplace as the surrounders, the neck, and this is a bit of a bike, and there's some guitar and they're like, oh yeah, whatever, John, whatever. We're like, busy at work.
Hey mom, don't we have scrap?
Yeah. So, and I was pretty influenced by lots of things growing up, films mainly, music, guitars. And so then I started to realize, understand the guitar, but it suddenly becomes more than just the guitar, and it becomes about the relationship of Brian and his dad building it, and the realization that actually that's pretty cool in itself, let alone, as we've said lots of times, all the things that he's gone on to do with it, and the music they've created. But actually building it with his dad was pretty cool. And then like I talked to my friends about, do you realize Brian May built his guitar? And I'm like, I didn't care, John. Just a guitar. And so then you start gravitating to talking to people on the forum who've been inspired by it too, and you end up like getting on the phone. I was lucky to go to the first original meetup and meet lots of people. But yeah, to answer your question, I think quite soon after realizing it was homemade, I just thought this thing's special. And yes, it's the red special, so it's red and special. But to me, it resonated with it being something that they've made that didn't exist, that wasn't shop bought. You couldn't buy one, so it's almost like there's a rite of passage to getting one at that point. You had to build one, because there wasn't builders out there. There was a few. The KZ was around, but it wasn't the KZ Pro. It's just the KZ.
But it wasn't. But it wasn't one of those. It was Excalibur. It's this. There's only the one of them, and people have made copies of it, but he didn't go buy it off the shelf. And I mean that's the really kind of incredible thing. It's like any of these great guitar players. I mean, with the exception of Eddie Van Halen, but not to anywhere near the same extent, I don't think. It's just the amount of time that went into just kind of, creating your instrument, your weapon to go out into the world with it, like from scratch. It's like that's just a different level, and it could have not turned out. I mean, I think like the Edge built a guitar, and they were like, "You should probably buy a guitar," And like Tom York from Radiohead, because of Brian, he built a guitar, and same thing. Like his dad was like, "We'll buy you one. Don't worry." So for it to turn out as well as it did, and for him to have done what he did, it's inspiring, and I think that's why we're still talking about it.
Definitely. And so I think, but that's like that whole thing hit me as a young man trying to figure out who I was. And so then I did my usual thing of, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it completely. So I went out to try and accumulate all of the stuff without necessarily knowing that I didn't need any of it. And I did what everyone does, and I bought the cheapest of everything to start. I didn't, as I said, I bought a Friar Treble Booster and an 8030, but I then went off and bought some other cheap stuff to go with that, and then sold it, and then bought more expensive stuff, and then got pretty fed up with it all at some point in my life, just through what I was doing at work and relationships outside of work, and I canned guitar playing really, and went away from it all. And still listen to Queen songs and still loving Queen and the story of it, but I think because I ended up in a place and I'd been following this, I think I'd associated the two together, and I just need to break from it all. And then I met Vicky, and we got married, and I think at some point after meeting Vicky, I'd said I played guitar, and she said, "Well, you don't have a guitar, something like this." And well, I used to love Brian May's guitar, and he built his guitar, and she's quite interested in the story. I think she's humoring me because how interested she was back then. You know what it's like. And so she gave me the okay to like get another Red Special and to start doing some bits and pieces. And I actually played, when we got married, we'd spoken to the band about me playing some songs with them. So I actually played in the Queen tribute band in my early 20s for a year or two, which we won't talk about. So I'd played with the band a few times and for a bit, and so we convinced them that I could play, and they learnt 2 songs, "We Will Rock You" and "Tie Your Mother Down," obviously. And so at our wedding, Vicky knew.
Dedicated to your mother-in-law.
Yeah, to the surprise of everyone that was in attendance who knew me but didn't know I played guitar, I got up on stage and picked up the Red Special I had at that point, which was a Corrado Red Special, played through a Vox 8030 VR, and absolutely nailed "Tie Your Mother Down" and "We Will Rock You" a couple of times through the night, which was pretty cool. And then sort of like, again, I was like, this is pretty fun, isn't it? This is pretty cool. I knew I probably ought to see what's going on in this Red Special world again. That was quite good fun. And so I came back to the forum. It's interesting. I'm going to call him out on this now. There was debate around the future of the Red Special forum, and that it needed an administrator or someone else to help. And I said, like, I know I've just come back, but I'll put my hand up and say I'll do this. And Lee Spate said, "I don't mean this to come across funny, John, but you were here once and you left us for 4 years. What's the guarantee you're going to stick around?" I was like, that's a really good point. It's a really valid point, Lee. I can't give you any guarantees, but I will try my best. I don't think I was asked at that point to do it for that very good reason. And later on, then put my name forward again after I'd done a meetup or 2. And now I'm the sole administrator of the original Red Special Forum. And there's some stuff going on with that, which will be cool later on in 2023, where we'll be doing something with that. But then Andy Guyton released the Red Special Transporter in 2000. I can't remember when we talked about them coming out, and I got really excited because it was new. So it was like, this is a Red Special, but it doesn't look like a Red Special. And I know from previous playing guidance that the neck's right, and if Andy's built it, it's going to be pretty close. And I was like, it's kind of like convincing myself that if I bought one, it would be like, well, it's not going to push me down the road of playing just Queen songs, because it doesn't look like it. And I'm quite small, so it's a smaller guitar, and I could take it with me wherever I go. So I convinced myself that I should put my name forward for buying one. And it was buying that and getting it and going collecting it. And then I was like, it'd be cool to meet up with everyone from the good old days again in a room. And that's where the meetup came from.
So we've Andy Guyton and Vicky to blame.
Yeah.
Or to thank, depending on how you look at it.
I would say to blame.
Well, did you ever write music? Did you ever play in a band of your own?
I played in a band as a Queen tribute band. So we obviously played Queen songs. So although I can't remember how to play some of them now, I mean I can, but I don't play all the songs we used to play. I once learnt the whole of like Wembley 86 in a rough way, not completely exactly the same, because there were things I used to do to cheat, because I'm no Brian May. I have had a go at writing music, but I wouldn't say I'm very good at it. Only maybe because I didn't practice enough at it, and I certainly nowadays don't play as much guitar as I should do. Just through time really being full-time employed, a husband, a father, and running a podcast,
and a meetup,
and trying to look after some bits of the old school forums. So I've never really, I wouldn't say I'm a prolific writer of songs. I've got a few things I play that are sort of things that I put together, progressions that I put together that I'll go back to if I'm on my own. But no, I generally, if these days we've got a piano now and the children are learning piano, so I'll sit down at the piano and bash out some different chord progressions. Nothing's amazing, but I kind of like where it goes. But,
it's good for the brain.
Yeah, it's mainly just replicating what Brian does, really. And that quest to, back in the day, it was the quest to try and sound like him. Now it's to try and make those sounds. At some point, I'm sure I'll get back to trying to hold the guitar in exactly the same way he does, because there's a lot to be said for where your thumb is and the angle of your wrist and how that affects your vibrato. And there's some things I used to think about a lot more than I do now about that, where I'd actually just watch his hands and then stand by a mirror and try and do the same things.
I remember watching him play, and I can't play the way he does with his thumb, but I remember watching him early days, and it was like the One Vision behind the scenes video. And my mom played guitar and she sang, and she showed me the first couple chords, and I was like, what is this chord that he's playing? She comes in, she's like, it's a G. And it was just like the way he did it. I was like, I don't know how you get your fingers to do that, but I was like, but it is kind of strange, like that influence, because it's not, to me, it wasn't like mimicry. Well, I guess it was mimicry, but it wasn't trying to copy him. It was just watching his hands and going, okay, I need to be able to do that. So how is he doing it? Maybe that'll work for me. And so like there have been things I pick up, like having your pinky up, keeping, just for me, I think of it as just keeping it out of the way of muting other strings, and it's like, there's just little things that like aren't, I don't know if I can do it with my other hand, you know what I mean? But it's just a weird thing. But
no, and it's things that I've spent the early days, I'd spend an hour, like literally, probably because I had them, but I would practice guitar 1 hour, 2 hours a day, and I would be watching the videos of him playing, whether it was Starlix again or whether it was some of the Wembley footage or A Night at the Bowl. And I would be, I think on one of the Wembley DVDs there was Brian Cam, so it's like One Vision. Just looking at Brian. So I'd be stood like trying to watch and figure out what he was doing with his hands and whereabouts. I knew what chord he was playing, but you'd look from behind and he'd be like up here somewhere, and like, so how is he playing that chord up there? What does that look like? How do I make that sound? And I used to spend loads more time. These days I don't bother. I just play, muscle memory comes back. I mean, I played at your meetup, the first one, got up on stage and played some stuff, and that was probably the first time I'd played in 6 years with people, and
but it's all there.
yeah, but and it comes back. It's not as polished as it was, and you make more mistakes. And I think, yeah, as you get better, you just make less mistakes when in guitar. So all that it's still stored inside my fingers or inside my brain in some form. But I don't think about. I don't necessarily set myself up for that these days when I sit down and play as much. Just because I think it was so time. I mean, when you're 20, 21 and you've got a girlfriend, you probably don't see them half as much as you did your wife, or you might not have a girlfriend, and you get home from work and actually you can spend 2 hours playing guitar, and it doesn't really eat into your life at all.
Right.
There's lots of other considerations now, like noise and screaming children, and the clubs and the school runs. So I'm sure I'll get back to it, but yeah, it's mainly just trying to, for me, create that homage to Brian May as best I can when I'm back in the day, and that's stuck.
Yeah, and it's good to pass it down, I think, too, because I mean, the biggest takeaway I think from myself doing the meetups was the younger people coming and going. Never thought I'd be able to hear, 3 amps, red special turbo booster in a room, and it's like, I'm right there with you. Like, I have 3 amps now, but that's like in the last couple of years, So it's like it's neat to be able to, show the young people that like it's something to aspire to and try to do, and it's fun. And I mean, speaking of gear, I think you've owned probably maybe every replica ever made. Is that maybe possible?
Yeah, possibly.
I mean,
not on the list.
Not to divert too far, but like just because you have owned a lot of them. I mean, I'm just curious, like your general thoughts on different ones. I mean, to me, like I've said before, like the Guild was always like the number one thing for me. But is there anything that you miss, or anything you wish you didn't get rid of, I guess?
It's
and you got the guy, and you've got a homemade now.
Yeah, and I think I've spoken a lot about this to you before, Luke. I think with me, a piece of gear, if I'm going to keep it, it has to speak to me, and it has to have some significance to it. Whether that's something that's self-significant or whether there's some significance in it, I think it needs to speak to me in some way. And I say this without, like, if this didn't speak to me in some way, I wouldn't keep it, I would sell it. But when I pick it up, it has what I feel is something that makes it a little bit different to the other builders. And I can feel it when I pick up a different guitar. And that might be that I get used to the setup on this one, or it might just be that it's in my head. But either way, it makes me play better and feel better about it. But the differences, I think, the noticeable things are the difference in finish. When you hold things, all of us, our hands are slightly different and feel things differently, and they sweat differently. And I think how your hand interacts with the neck on your left hand and how it feels is really important. So I'd say on some of the red special replicas I've played where it's not used Rustins, or it's used like a nitro or a can't think what the other finish is called now, it gets a bit sticky. And my hand sticks on it. And I don't like that, because it feels like I'm like you can't move up the neck quickly. So that's a real thing, that's a tangible thing. And then it's things like knowing that, I mean, I'm really anal about this stuff, and I don't know where it comes from, apart from it. I just want to have stuff that I feel is as close to the original as possible. But I've had guitars that don't have the correct switch plate inside, and it makes no difference to how it.
I know.
It makes no difference to how it feels, and it's completely irrational. But when I do take the lid off and open it up, and it looks like the original, it brings me great pleasure to know that it looks the same, and it's got the same genre switches in it that Brian's has got, and the pot plate is in the correct place and has the correct capacitor posts, and I've got a Bolgin jack on it. And I think it becomes into slightly obsessive behavior then, and it's something I try not to say, don't get too caught up on, because it actually makes no difference in how it sounds, but maybe it does, because it's how you feel about it. But no, so in answering your question properly, the differences are really just how the builder does something. So it's more maybe the aesthetic of how the joint is on the back of the neck, or how they've done the piece of binding under the neck heel, or how the volute is on the back, and it's interpretations, because those builders haven't necessarily had access to be able to measure the original. And but having said that, I would say there's never a Guyton guitar I've ever played, whether it's a Red Special or any of the other ones that Andy's made, that doesn't just feel awesome when you play it. And again, I don't know if that's because I think that about Andy's work, or because that's actually real, but to me that's a real thing.
No, he makes quality guitars for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been lucky enough to play a couple now, so I can be an outside party to attest to that.
Yeah, and that's something that you don't get. You know, it's one thing building a Red Special, but then actually setting up to play really well is a completely different kettle of fish altogether, and making it an instrument that's usable. We can all, make it look like the thing, but actually making it usable is a different skill altogether. My own guitar isn't as easy to play as this. It's playable, and you can, I'm amazed when I take it to the meetup how people can make it sound. But it's not as easy to play as this. Yeah, really like the feel of the neck and how it interacts. And yeah, each build is slightly different, and the back of the neck is slightly different, and it's the details, I think, that make a difference. They're all much of a muchness in terms of, a lot of them now have got correct sort of tremolo, and Ron Smith's work has helped over the last few years certainly make sure that the parts are of a quality that, I mean, originally you can buy them, you had to make them or know someone that made them, and yeah, it was a nightmare. Now they're readily available, which is fantastic. Yeah, I think for me, if I'm going to own a piece of gear these days, I'm much more choosy on what I own. I think I've been guilty in the past of thinking this is the next thing that's going to inspire me, but actually that comes from within. And it's if something talks to me, then it appeals to my specific nature or of wanting the right things, then I'm likely to keep it. So, and also I think, like, I've been on a journey for 20 years. I really wanted to own a Guyton guitar, the Guyton Red Special, and I missed out on the original 50 he made. So when he mentioned he was making the time warps, I was like, I've got to get one of those, because it might be the last chance I get to own one. And the fact that it's relic to look like the guitar from Starlix, which meant so much to me, and on my journey, just seemed to go full circle with it. So
exactly.
Although I've got the incorrect strap on today.
Oh man,
I know, I wasn't planning that very well this morning, but
and you know the guy that makes those straps.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, what a guy. Two guys, actually, father and son team, building something to do with Red Specials. Seemed quite nice. And that's great to work with my dad on a project to do that. And again, we made these straps for the Guyton time warps together, and there's a video coming out about that where I'm going to sit down with my dad and talk about it, and we got some footage when he was doing it. But
nice.
It just to make 21 replica guitar straps took us 2 years. I mean, it feels like it took us a month now because it's all done, but it took 2 years to replicate the original guitar strap. And we did as good a job as we could do, and everyone's pretty pleased with them. And Andy likes them.
They turned out great.
Yeah. So that was a whole other video on that, but that was fun. Yeah. So
that.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah. So the difference, the difference of all the guitars is really in the detail, I think.
Yeah, and I think you've kind of honed in on. I mean, like you said, you've got a good one. You waited just long enough to get the right guy.
Yeah, through pure luck. So I've ended up getting rid of lots of things to help pay for this as well.
There you go.
because when I look back, yeah, it's great to have an 8030 or an amp to play through to make the sound, but I think the story of the guitar and the guitar itself stands for so much more to me that I'd rather have the one right guitar and none of the other stuff than have not the right guitar and a whole bunch of stuff. So
Right. Yeah, I can dig it. Yeah. So just to wrap it up a little bit here, what do we have to look forward to next on the podcast?
So we've got some
You've got
new
the big
guests.
one.
Yeah, it's done now. Well, I can't tell you everything, Luke, because some things need to stay secret.
Oh
But
no.
so a lot more of the same. So more podcast guests. I'm going to try this year and do more episodes, and try and get at least one a month out, if not a bit more. So try and get more than 12 guests on in 2023. Working with Andrek now, so we've got some other ideas for some other bits and pieces we can put together just to go throughout the year to document dates and things that are going on with videos. We're also going to expand. We did the Luke Timmons guitar rig rundown last year. We might try and do a few more of those with some of the tribute acts that are in the country that they're willing to, just because they're good fun and it gives you a real understanding of what's going on. Luke's rig is fantastic, but it's interesting to know what other people are using and how they're getting their sound.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite interesting. Again, documenting things at a time and seeing what people are using. And then there's some reviews coming. So I've been talking about this for 2 years. Finally doing a review of this, to let you all know what I actually think about it, which I think is pretty obvious. I love it, but to have some bit more detail about what's on mine and some of the choices on mine and what the options were when you could buy them. And we've got a video coming about how we built the straps and some time with my dad. And then there's some other things bubbling along in the background that could be interesting if they come off, but I never want to tell everyone what's going on in case it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
It just means you need to, if you don't already, to make sure that you follow the podcast on social media and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you know when new content is posted so that you don't miss out.
Stay tuned. Well, it's been a real thrill having you on our podcast, John.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been great.
We'll look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Luke. Cheers,
Take
mate.
care.
You too.
And that was my podcast. Thank you so much to Luke Holwerda, guest number 1, for agreeing to interview me. Luke has his own podcast on Sherlock Holmes and has worked with the Origins podcast, which also met Sir Brian Howard May back in the day. So Luke is a great person, and Luke hosts the US Red Special Guitar Meetup, which is in the end of April 2023 in Phoenix, Arizona, at the Linga Longa Lounge, which is a mouthful to say, but make sure you check that out. Luke, thank you so much for asking me all those questions and having such a good time chatting to you about my own story. It's great to actually get it out there, and I feel quite honoured that people keep asking me to tell them how my story was brought about and what my own journey with the Red Special Queen and how I got to making this most wonderful podcast for all of you. So it's been great fun to actually think about that and think about the twists and turns that came around and then get a chance to talk to you about them. And hopefully people will find it interesting. And that brings Nigel back up to the top of the most requested list. And then all of the other people that we have lined up for the rest of this year. And we've got some fantastic things coming this year. Some really great suggestions, some great guests, and some other content too, which I can't wait to show you. That famous Guyton guitar review is coming. It's getting closer, so please stick around, and that will be there. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and all that really, really good stuff so that you know when we post new content. Go and check out our Instagram page, which is growing. YouTube continuously grows, which is just amazing. And I just want to say a heartfelt from me thank you to all of you for watching, listening, turning up to the meetup, sending me private messages, sending me emails, asking for things, asking for content, sending suggestions. It really does mean the world that this small idea I had with Luke, as you've heard in the podcast, has grown into something like this. I never really thought that this would happen, and I never saw myself as an interviewer or someone to get the best out of people, but I've proven myself wrong. And been able to provide this, and it's a great honour to be able to do that, especially the source material is Queen and Sir Brian May and the Red Special. It's an absolute wonderful honour to do this for everyone, and yeah, keep safe everyone. Thanks very much again, and I'll catch you later.